This is a really hard panel to follow because my morning just got really, really wonderful. They just told us we get $35 billion to spend on projects in Texas. That's a great way to start the day. However, I do want to make one comment on Quincy's comments and our partners at TxDOT. I think they could spend all $35 billion on trying to stop people from speeding in Texas and still not succeed. It is going to be a tough task. That speed control is very hard, Quincy.
In spite of the challenge of the task, okay, we are not going to back down. We're after this. I got a question from Dallas, and I neglected to mention that Michael Morris is involved in a program that we're bringing the NPOs into this conversation, and we're attacking this problem from all different directions. You guys have any ideas that you think I may have missed? You text them to me. You go right to the top of the list. Thank you.
Yeah. If y'all hadn't noticed, TxDOT spends an inordinate amount of time and resources on traffic control and safety. Commissioner Laura Ryan, that's been her main focus for the past few years, and so we're excited to partner with them. I get the opportunity today, one, to be joined by three beautiful women up on stage. There's nothing wrong with that. And two, I get to talk to you about sustainability and equity today. Something that really over the past decade has risen to the top of priority lists, not only at the national level, but here in Texas. We have the opportunity to really make a difference for future generations here in Texas through the way we implement and manage projects. So I'm going to let the three women on stage introduce themselves. I love that I'm the only male here. I also love that that our panel is made up of such a diverse group of people. That is exactly what we're going for in Texas infrastructure. So to my left, Diana Aguilar Ramirez, would you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your job?
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm Diana Ramirez, and when I first accepted the speaking engagement here, I was the Director of Equity Impact for the Department of Economic Equity and Opportunity, which is a startup department at Harris County. On February 1st, I was tapped to head up the department, so I'm now the Executive Director for the department and looking a bit wider, broader scope for the department. We do the Minority and Women Business Enterprise Program for Harris County, which is also a startup. We do contract compliance. We do policy research and analysis. We have a research team. And we are also reviewing all the ARPA projects with an equity framework that we've developed. And that's something that we want to keep going as we're looking at infrastructure projects and capital planning.
Thank you. Okay, to the right, Joanna Clark.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me today. Very excited to be in the panel. My name is Joanna Clark. I work with the City of Houston and Houston Public Works. I've been with the city, I had the privilege of being with the city for 18 years, working in transportation and drainage. Currently, I manage stormwater operations. Very proud of our large team that takes care of the massive drainage infrastructure in the city. We program all the maintenance, rehabilitation programs, and are very deep involved in the planning of future infrastructure in the city.
And after that, last but not least, Krista Stoneham.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me once again. My name is Krista Stoneham, and I'm the newly appointed CEO and President of the Houston Land Bank. I've been in the role a whole 60 days now. But prior to that, I was with the City of Houston, serving in the Planning and Development Department, in addition to the Mayor's Office, working on equity work.
Okay, so that's a little bit of background on our panelists. It's no secret, Texas is the fastest growing state in the country. 4 of the top 10 fastest growing cities in the country are also in Texas. I think the statistic is now 1,200 families move to Texas a day. That brings great opportunity, but also great challenges, right? Not only do we have all of those people moving here, we have historically underserved parts of our urban areas and rural areas for decades. So we have a big challenge here in Texas. How do we build an infrastructure program that is fair and equitable and sustainable for everyone, not only who've been here, our tenured neighborhoods in some of our urban areas and providing a better quality of life in that area, but also addressing the growth concerns, right? Joanna, talk to us a little bit about how your organization is focused on that from a sustainability and equity perspective.
Yeah, the city of Houston has been making significant efforts last few years to be sure that we are incorporating equity, sustainability on all our projects and all our efforts, again, from the maintenance to the rehabilitation to the construction levels. But every effort like that needs foundation, and I will say the major effort is really Resilient Houston. The Resilient Houston plan has really laid out that foundation that we all need to see how we're gonna really program everything we do moving forward. The Resilient Houston, as you know, is very tied together with the climate action plan that the mayor had already developed. And departments like us in Public Works are really using that as the basis of programming everything. What I love about Resilient Houston is that it's not limited to really technical concepts or criteria really to plan for the future and investment, but it includes what is community engagement, technical aspects, sustainability. We are not looking at sustainability anymore as an additional touch to a project. Sustainability is really the basis for everything that we are doing, and equity and community engagement are very, very strong on the resilient plan that we're looking at. Over the years, I think decades, we have really left behind or given really the importance that the involvement of the community needs to have on the development of any projects. I'm an engineer, and many of you engineers here probably see it the same way. We have been so focused on technical aspects where the condition of the infrastructure is very, very important. But what does our community need? What do they want? What are they really their daily challenges that we need to address to our projects? So Resilient Houston is really one of the strongest, again, foundations that I can think of. The City of Houston has also developed programs like Complete Communities. I know our previous panel mentioned Complete Communities, and for us it's a very, very important mechanism to identify what areas really have been under-resourced for decades and how we're gonna do investment on those communities. From the various perspectives, we're looking really at projects to be complete projects, not looking necessarily at a street project, and then 2 years later we go and disturb the same community coming in with a drainage project. We really want them to be integral approaches. Streets, they're our secondary drainage system, and we cannot forget that. So just like Quincy and David mentioned before, every time we do any modifications on our roads, we need to think about drainage. And we can have the best roads, sidewalks, parks, but if our communities continue flooding, communities are not going to be there. Nobody's going to want to really live in Houston, and we don't want to be known as the city that floods. So that's really where Resilient Houston with the climate action plan comes in, where complete communities come in. And again, departments like us in Public Works are working very, very close with other groups, entities, mayor's office to be sure that that really happens.
I love the idea that now we're taking a holistic approach to infrastructure, right? It's no longer just the technical and engineering aspects of how to put a road down or a stormwater system down. We've really engaged this conversation and almost embraced it as policymakers and decision makers of an equitable future for us. We've done so so much that we've now created a department at the city or at Harris County devoted strictly to this. I think if you said that in this group of people 10 years ago, folks would have looked at you with a really strange look. I love the idea that now we've gotten here. Talk to us about how equity goes into planning, how your department and your division is making a change for the future at Harris County.
Sure. So, the equity idea is we have to build it in upfront, like Joanna was saying. I'm also a member of the Government Finance Officers Association, which is kind of a really kind of techie kind of organization, but it's basically all of, government finance officers, budget officers, planners, accountants, auditors, and they do best practices. And we have economic development and capital planning committee that's national. We're working on best practices on how to incorporate equity into capital planning. So, we're looking at it from the financial side and the policy side in that committee. And I want to make sure, I sit on that committee, so I want to make sure that as the department at Harris County, that we are able to contribute to those kinds of discussions. The other area on equity that I think is very important for us to look at is building the business case for equity. I think that's where we miss out right now, and I think that we can build out that kind of business case. Sam Sargent was talking about earlier about the problems with workforce and labor shortages. Right now, my department is working on putting together 2 RFPs for workforce training programs using ARPA funds. And one of the things that we're looking at is it's lots of times workforce training can be seen as a social service, but really, in my view and under equity, it's bringing in that human capital that's sidelined right now because they don't have the skill set they need to get a good job. So I think that building that business case for equity and then being able to have a rubric by which we can assess if programs are equitable is really important, because then that gives everybody kind of the same standards to shoot for, and you can assess your own projects to see whether you're hitting the goals. So I think equity we need to get to the point where we're actually able to incorporate it upfront and actually have very straightforward standards that are feasible for people to meet.
What do they say about change? The first step to change is identifying that you have a problem. I'd say we've identified that we have a problem, and now we're taking real steps to address the problem. Maybe no more so than at the Houston Land Bank. You all have done just phenomenal work on identifying ways in which to revitalize and enrich communities around the Houston area. Talk to us a little bit about how you are going into communities that maybe have been underserved for decades and truly making a change there.
Absolutely. So I love that these ladies spoke before me, because I really think it helps paint the picture of what we do at the Houston Land Bank. So I started off as the lead planner for the first complete community, which was Acres Home. So I had the privilege of really hearing firsthand directly from the community members what they want to see, what their dreams are, right? Because that's really where it starts, and what do you aspire? And here at the Land Bank, we really help to implement that work as the local government corporation for the city of Houston. We started as a program back in '99, where the city would go and acquire tax delinquent properties and sell them to builders for $1 with the contingency that they would produce affordable homes. But really, over time, lack of capacity and oversight, they needed really true leadership, and that's when it officially became a LGC in 2018. And they've really been focused on the stabilization of the programs that were in place in terms of affordable homes and development. But after the passing of State Bill 1679 in September of last year, it really helped open the doors for more possibilities for the organization. So in terms of my leadership and how I see us moving forward, we're going to be launching a brownfields program to really help with some of the environmental justice issues in these communities. We're also potentially going to pilot really a true mixed-use development in one of the complete communities as well, and really truly be a lead implementer and instigator of change by bringing the solutions that the community asks for with the technical expertise of the players at the table, including the engineering community.
I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. The intersection between environmental justice and also growth, right? I'll kind of open it up to all three of you. How do you see that working? Look, we've identified that Texas has 4 of the top 10 fastest growing cities in the country. That environmental justice and equity, the ideas of environmental justice and equity have to be mirrored with both growth and sustainability. So talk to us from your organization's perspective on how best to accomplish the intersection of those ideas.
I'm happy to start and then welcome the opportunity. So we're starting with the community. educating them on what is a brownfield, because it's a little unclear for most, right? Unless you're really truly involved deep into that work. So working directly with the communities and educating them in terms of workshops and simple language about it. Typically, it starts with just speaking to someone and letting them know the options available to them. This grant that we received from the EPA is an application process. We'll be working directly with community-based organizations, faith-based communities, and going directly into the communities that we're targeting to really be intentional about bringing them into our process. And then, of course, actually going out and testing the work. Now, we don't have the funds yet to do the cleanup, but that goes back to bridging that relationship with the EPA and really being, once again, intentional about integrating the technical support that's available, but also connecting it to the needs of the community, because they may not know that, this former dry cleaner, right, is definitely contaminated, right? And most private companies see that as a risk, but since we are a government nonprofit, I'm more than willing to raise our hands to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, I can add to that definitely it's important. You mentioned early how important it is to know first step is not when there is a problem. Second, to know where the problem is. And I think that's when, for me, I think data is very important. And again, we have been using not the wrong data, but I don't think the complete data that we have been requiring to identify where these communities are and where those challenges are really located. Again, speaking from the public works perspective in stormwater, we have used data from past events to identify where these communities are, so we can go back to really incorporate environmental justice. Why are we looking at events that pass, who filed a claim, who called a 311 system to report a complaint? We need to start looking towards the future, to our projections, what is coming up in the future, what events are going to be impacting what areas. I think once we have that identified, there are many plans that Public Works is working on to have that available. Our projects have already started really incorporating what is the works for enrichment and nurturing the community as an active part of those projects. And I think that's when that environmental justice factor comes in, because we are not really just coming in with a project to rehabilitate or reconstruct certain part of the infrastructure, but we're also involving the community from the beginning to end and throughout the service life of that infrastructure. So many of the projects that the Mayor's Office has been working on in partnership with us in Public Works and other departments incorporate workforce training, workforce participation, workforce really enrichment into understanding how to maintain that infrastructure. Green stormwater infrastructure is a perfect example of that. We talk a lot about it. We are in a very steep learning curve in the city of Houston to understand how that infrastructure works, what the benefits are, but we need the workforce to be able to not just build it, but maintain it throughout the years. So those communities, all the communities in Houston need to be involved, and they are being, again, progressively incorporated on the development of projects.
Yeah, great points that you all are making. And I think, sustainability and resilience and equity are all inextricably intertwined. There's no way you can look at one without the other. A lot of times the communities that are most historically disinvested in are also the ones that are the most economically fragile, and the ones that are in harm's way, in floodways and in areas that get the big environmental problems. So I think that you have to look at it holistically and comprehensively, and really bring in the idea that equity is not just equity on race or ethnicity. It's on economic vulnerability. It's on location. I think that has a lot to do with it, because one of the things that I think that we need to look at too is in capital planning, how do we get ahead of the curve? We go into an area that's historically underinvested and we bring in the infrastructure, and then the folks, you have higher property values, folks get pushed out and displaced to areas outside the city in in the unincorporated Harris County and unincorporated areas, rural areas that have fewer resources, fewer supports that can be provided to the most vulnerable people. So, we keep pushing people out after the area that they were in gets the infrastructure it needs. So we have to find a way, I think, as government to work and identify those places ahead of time and figure out how we can keep those people there and help them be able to benefit from the infrastructure investments, because that's what makes a community really livable.
So I want to go off script a little bit, so please don't throw things at me, ladies. And I certainly don't want to mention certain projects because I don't want tomatoes thrown in the crowd. But let's expand on that. I'll let everybody in on a secret. Houston floods. That's going to shock everybody, I know that. But look, some of the work that we really need to do is in some of the most underserved areas of this community. Provide us tips from your organization's perspective so that we can go in and revitalize infrastructure and address major stormwater concerns while not disrupting the community, as you discussed. I think from my perspective and some in the audience, some helpful tips that we can utilize would be greatly appreciated.
Well, let me see if more than tips, I can share with you how we are really implementing what we're talking about, or how we identify where those communities are and how we get to preserve those communities with their historical value without really disrupting it and really changing their whole environment. Again, identifying where the issues are and prioritizing well, I think that's the first step, and really doing it like that. We need the data and the community involvement on all of those. I'm sharing with you, with the city's development, its first stormwater master plan is in early stages, and we expect probably within the next year and a half to 2 years to already have results. So this is gonna be a 2D model of the drainage infrastructure we have in the city that is really gonna help us, again, not just be looking at past data, but what we actually have today and how we can match that with projected extreme events. How is that going to impact what areas and at what level, so we can again run our projects properly. Also, we have been developing stronger educational components on our projects. I think that the previous panel mentioned that aspect, and I think education is key. We have a lot of the communities that need investment, but unfortunately they have the perception that their infrastructure is not necessarily what they need. It's definitely, some of it is under capacity, needs rehabilitation and needs reconstruction. But I'm gonna give you a perfect example, the concept of roadside ditches. A lot of our communities don't like roadside ditches. And if you look at it from the drainage perspective, the capacity that a ditch provides versus a storm sewer system underground is significantly higher. There are a lot of neighborhoods where those ditches are in good condition that really don't have any issues during extreme events. However, obviously that type of infrastructure requires higher levels of maintenance and also participation from the community of keeping their capacity intact. But for that, we need to educate the community. Most of the community do not understand how drainage infrastructure works. So sometimes the solutions that are put out there by organizations or advocates for new infrastructure really don't have the clear understanding of what we need to do. So again, I'm very, very excited about the Stormwater Master Plan, because that's going to give us a lot of the data that we can use, again, to not just program the projects, but educate the community about what is better for them. Do we need to invest tens of millions of lowering the level of the street to go to a curb and gutter system? Or can we invest less amount but make a really effective system still with our open drainage channels? So City of Houston was very close with flood control, and that's a very, very positive and interesting partnership, because they do understand where we're coming from, and we do understand their challenges too. And our system, when you look at Houston, is one integrated system. We might have multiple agencies handling the assets and their maintenance and programs, but it is one system. And the community needs to understand that so we can again work all together, have really effective partnerships to make our infrastructure better. Each neighborhood is different, and that's an aspect I really wanted to mention. We cannot be looking at the city as one. We need to look at it really at the neighborhood scale to see what solutions are better on each area.
And I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing it. My perspective is more of flood resilient development, right? Because we own hundreds of lots and such throughout Houston. I think a great example is recently I was informed about literally a forest that is just 15 minutes outside of downtown in Setagast. It's 100 acres that's been undeveloped for over 100 years. We own about 50 lots, and I've heard different private companies who own maybe 100 or so, and literally there's no infrastructure improvements at all. No streets, no water, no sewer, nothing. It baffles me that a community of opportunity such as Setagast has literally been ignored for this long. But I see it as an opportunity for change. I don't really believe in challenges, I believe in solutions. And I would love to work with partners in order to really move forward on being intentional about building a flood resilient development, right? And incorporating the green water infrastructure. And it's great to have it on the master plan city level, but like Joanna said, it is about the neighborhood and how you incorporate it at the smaller scale as well. Another great example, and I hate to put Councilmember Robinson on the spot, is a few years ago, he orchestrated a design challenge called Complete the Community with the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, where they work directly with the communities on solutions. And the winner of the competition was a group of students from Prairie View A&M, which is my alma mater. Had nothing to do with the winner, but it was about passive systems for homes, to be intentional about knowing that it may flood, so why don't you raise it higher? This was way before the city changed their requirements and code, and I would love to get that developed. And I'm hoping that I have the support for that, because it will be a little more expensive than, the active systems that we're so used to, but there's other creative solutions in this country, and we just can't be afraid to go and do it.
What's the old adage? An ounce of prevention is worth 10 pounds of cure. So hopefully we do it right prior instead of having to revitalize it later. Okay, you started the conversation. I'll give you the last word.
Okay, sounds good. I like that. So I think one of the things that is really critical that we don't do enough is talk to each other and really work together. Lots of times it's the systems that we have in place with government, and it's an RFP and it's a procurement, you can't talk to people. There are other ways to do things, and I think we need to be innovative in that. And the panel that follows this one includes a couple of folks that, when I was at Travis County, before I moved here, worked with to get our civil and family courts facility built under a progressive public-private partnership, P3. And it's Rodney Moss and Jay Browns who'll be speaking in a little bit. But I think that if we can be more innovative and work together, not only to work with the private sector, but also with the community and understand what the community wants, what the community doesn't want, and then work around that to solve the problem, I think we can. And I mean, I'm a policy wonk and a problem solver, and maybe sometimes I wear the rose-colored glasses, but I think we can solve some of these issues by merely talking to each other, understanding where we each stand, understanding what our bottom lines are, because in the end, I think at our core, we all want the same thing. We want better livable communities. We want to spend our money on good things instead of disaster recovery. That seems to be an endless cycle here in Harris County. And yesterday I got a little thing on my phone that said, oh, by the way, 99 days till the start of hurricane season. So we're at day 98 today. I mean, and so that's the mindset here, and we need to change that, and we need to address it. And I think being very open with each other and talking about it and trying to find the solutions together and actually considering P3s. I don't know if Harris County or City of Houston has done a lot of those, but I think that there's something there that we should think about.
Mother Nature hasn't made her mind up in Texas for the past 6 months, so I have no idea what's going to happen in 98 days. Does anybody else have anything to add before we open it up for questions? I want to give you the opportunity to add anything if necessary.
Yeah, I probably will add that we need everybody's, I love that the topic of today's session is really innovation, because it's easy to talk about projects, infrastructure, let's solve flooding. Unfortunately, we cannot tilt Houston a couple of degrees, that will solve a lot of our issues. We need innovation. I can tell you that a lot of the projects that we plan and move forward, they're challenging. We have a lot of our complete communities under-resourced neighborhoods that are very challenging, very narrow streets. Where are we going to feed our drainage infrastructure? Where are we going to provide sidewalks? Where are we going to be sure that all these comprehensive solutions fit? And it really takes everybody, public and private sector, to come up with innovative ideas. There are ways to do it. Many other cities, many other countries have done it. We benchmark all the time because we find issues that I'm pretty sure somebody else has solved somewhere, or something very similar. So it really takes, and we have great minds here in Houston. So I just want to close up with really inviting everybody to have that creative mind at all times. There's not such a thing of a typical project. Every project can involve innovation, can involve sustainability. Green infrastructure, we need really to be very aggressive about that, because that's going to be one of our strongest tools to not just adapt to the new conditions, but to also be sure that we are promoting the green space that not just this generation, but future generations need and deserve. So it really takes all of us to move away from just looking maybe at one concept as mobility. We need to look at mobility, but we need to look at also walkability, drainage, green infrastructure, green space, preservation, air quality, water quality. All of those things really need to come together.
I'll be brief because I want to be sure I'm saving space for the participants, but I'm just echoing what they all said in terms of you don't have to know everything as a subject matter expert. It's just being intentional about bringing everybody to the table and finding that solution by starting off with what is your purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. And collaboratively, you will get to the solution if you're willing to create more seats.
Krista, you've used a word often that I think is really important that we don't use enough, and that's intentional. I'd like to think, when I started 20 years ago in government affairs, sustainability and equity were just buzzwords. They were nothing. They really had no meaning. Now, thanks to the work of TxDOT, all the way down to regional mobility authorities, leaders like the City of Houston, Harris County, Houston Land Bank, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Fort Worth, and all in between, these words have real meaning now. Sustainability and equity are both programs. They're meaningful ways that we now construct our infrastructure systems. So do we have work left to do? Absolutely. But I want to give credit to all of our partners in the infrastructure system on making these realities over the last decade. They really do have meaning now. With that, I'll open it up with any questions. Ken's got the mic.
I'll ask a question.
Here, I'm pointing at you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, there you go.
I appreciate that. Your name? Yes, I'll okay, yeah. My name is Helen Callier with Brad Lake Technical Services Company, and I'm from Texas. I own the state. So thank you so much for being here. It's an educational question. You mentioned about the ditches, and I'm sure that they go across the 5 communities, and each one of you can respond. And number one, if you could speak more to the educational component, because such as are there efforts like if you see something, say something. I know that's a Metro, slogan. Along the lines that if you see someone dumping, right, in the ditches, then we know you're going to be touched. So if you can speak to the educational component, and then also how can we help, right, as consultants, contractors, and so forth, as we're working as this community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, because we have we have throughout the years initiated various programs and are trying to get stronger on promoting and sharing the information that we already have. So programs like Adopt a Drain, I invite you all to go to the website. It's adoptadrain.org. It's a program established by the City of Houston with several partners. It started a few years ago, and we are actually reviving the website to make it more interactive and familiar. But through that program, neighborhoods, residents, companies can adopt one of the inlets or a couple, I don't know, as many as they want that are in close proximity to where they live or where they work. And all they have to do is really assist the city and be sure that those inlets are clear of debris. I mean, simple things like that really make such a difference. The number of participants in the program starts growing. And again, we're gonna do hopefully a big event within the next few months once that website gets to be revived. So that's one of those I really wanted to mention and promote. We share that information a lot with council districts. So council districts for us are very, very important because through them, we have really good mechanisms to share information with the public. So that's one of the programs we have already in place. We have developed also material regarding the importance on how roadside ditches perform. So I will be happy not only to share with you all. Fortunately, I didn't make a copy with me, but I will definitely share it for the organization to share with everybody. But we have a couple of brochures and flyers that talk about 5 reasons why roadside ditches are good. And they talk about capacity, they talk about how if they are maintained well, they can be absolutely aesthetically appealing. And again, the investment that you have to do on roadside ditches in they are built and rehabilitated and maintained properly is much, much lower than very expensive storm sewer systems that even if we wanted to, many of our communities their elevations just simply don't work to have closed systems. So again, council districts are very key for us to share that information. We are also modifying currently the Houston Public Works website, particularly on the transportation and drainage service line. We're going to have an educational component there where we're going to share all of these materials. So more to come. And again, the Stormwater Master Plan is a huge initiative for the city, and will be, once again, all the teams are in place and this starts moving forward within the next month or two. We're going to have good information for the public online too.
Do you want to mention the Adopt the Drain program, Joanna?
Yes,
I just did.
Did the whole thing?
I did. Did I say? Yes, that's the first program that I mentioned, Adopt a Drain. So look at it. Look at Adopt. You just Google City of Houston Adopt a Drain. That's a very, very good program, and we get very excited to see residents just owning infrastructure, and that's really the message we want to pass. There's no way. I'm telling you, we have over 250,000. Between inlets and manholes and elements that are associated with the 2,500 miles of ditches and 3,500 miles of storm sewers. So really, when I say massive infrastructure, I mean massive infrastructure. So we need the community, not just because we need them, but I think the sense of being part of a society where all of us need to contribute, that's really a basic thing. Just be sure your inlet is clean, and you get to name your inlet too. Properly. That was a small issue at the beginning of the program. But you get to own it. And when we do events, and Councilmember Robinson is very familiar with that, when we do events with Mayor's Office, there are organizations like Keep Houston Beautiful that really partners with us and give away goodies and vests and materials that maybe people need to again be out there safe on their street. Clean debris from that. So yes, thanks very much.
I was just going to add that I think education is really important in this work, especially with a city with no zoning, right? Almost anything goes. And on the community side, it's educating the community on how decisions are made. Why is it important to pay attention to city council? What is the planning commission, right? These are things that I've had conversations with them about because they believe that if you're in their neighborhood, that they should have a say-so, right? And on the personal side, on the heart side, right, they should. Like, they've lived there for generations. Why can't they have a say-so on if it should have a porch? Just simple things. They're not really asking for much. But I also just let them know that if you do want to have a voice, I think it would be helpful if you work with someone to create guidelines of what does success look like, right? And why you need to pay attention when that official notice comes in from the planning department about a variance and all these technical words that they don't understand. But it takes someone being intentional about explaining it to them and wiping away the technicalities of all these different, things that are in the code of ordinances, right? And then I think on the private side is there's so many plans out there about these neighborhoods. It's a little sad because, they've been talking about the same things for years and years and it's great. They get excited, but then it just sits on the shelf. And then that's when their trust is lost. And that's why, they're just a little disheartened about really being a part of the process and change because there's really no space for them to be a part of it.
Just one thing on the education, I think with Harris County, the education is how do you get someone to talk to? How do you find out who to go to? And with Harris County, we have 4 precinct offices and they do a lot of community outreach and engagement. But we're also right now working on a 311 phone system. And we're gonna make sure that we have staff from every department that's available to answer the calls, respond to the calls. So I think that's one of the big things that is gonna be helpful to us in actually reaching out to, having the community be able to tell us what's going on with them and where they need assistance. And then on how you can help is come talk to us. Give us your ideas. Let's work together. Let's get together as we're working on planning. I think that'll be really helpful for us.
My timer says we have 8 minutes, but Steven's over there checking his watch going, hey, my panel's about to start from 2 minutes ago. No, in order for us to stay on time and on track today, I'll close with that. But again, thank you to all of you for being a part of this conversation. It's one of them of utmost importance. So with that, thank y'all very much. Again, Steve, will you right up?